oil. But given the development of natural gas resources and the awareness that there is literally a mineable layer of methane on the ocean floor globally, all the organic matter in the ocean that has frozen and sunk to the ocean floor is available to be harvested for natural gas. And so you look out 20 years from now, the United States, or for that matter, China or Europe, is not going to need oil out of the Middle East, even as their resources are already being depleted. So the American investment in the military presence of Israel and our other partners in the Middle East, our motivation for continuing to put money into that is going to evaporate at a very rapid rate. Indeed, it is already evaporating as our energy dependence is becoming less at a speed that no one would have predicted even 5 years ago. But our ability to harvest methane from the ocean floor is not very far away. Now, once we stop pumping money, and our military support of other Middle Eastern states has literally been a bribe. Please don't attack Israel. We'll give you $1 billion of military aid a year if you just won't attack our friend Israel. Our financial investment in keeping those oil pipelines open is going to go away. What then? What's going to drive the economy of the Middle East, and what is going to keep Israel even able to defend itself against hostile neighbors where they have fueled that hostility for 70 years?
Well, Doctor, I see that the problem here is that these days the support for Israel is more driven by pro-Israel manipulation than American self-interest. I think that really, certainly in the last few years at least, support for Israel really isn't increasingly in the American self-interest. It's happening because of lobbies in the U.S. Again, the best Congress money can buy, or the best Congress pro-Israel groups can bribe. With massive levels of consolidation of pro-Israel ideological support in the Congress, I really find it difficult to imagine how we can get out of that situation in the near future, because it's so embedded now that you have to support Israel in whatever way, basically AIPAC and other such lobbies say, in order to get elected. And it is difficult to imagine how we can get out of that. But I really think, Israel is a developed economy. Of course, it has economic problems and, growing inequality. But it's got, adequate numbers of nuclear weapons. It's got adequate military technologies. It hires its drone technologies to my country, the UK. In a way, Israel has, become kind of the kind of, I want to say, out of control adopted child of the US. And, the US is now kind of the parent who's lost control and sort of being dragged along this path and that path by this, troubled child, I want to say. Because, as I say, really the American self-interest is becoming less and less clear. And I think particularly under Obama's administration, we've seen that, with the peace talks that Kerry's got himself promoting and trying to run and etc., it's kind of stumbling to buy time for Israel, which is what they want. Which is what the Israeli state wants.
An awful lot of the sympathy in the United States for Israel was predicated on an evangelical theology, that there were people that were just certain that the recreation of Israel as a Jewish state would make Jesus come back and bring about the end of the world. And so there was all of this, Baptist, Assemblies of God, Jehovah's Witnesses, all of the conservative evangelical and biblical literalist groups who were pro-Israel for reasons of magic and superstition.
Yeah, you're referring to the Christian Zionist. And that argument that you presented about whether or not Israel is a strategic interest, was whether or not Israel is in the strategic interest of the United States because of her oil reserves, is a common argument.
There's no oil in Israel.
Right, but because of the oil interest in the Middle East, that's sort of like a common dichotomy, or you're either in the camp of, yes, Israel is a strategic interest, which is sort of like the Noam Chomsky position, or you're in another camp, which Jeff Blankford takes, is that no, and he's documented it is, in fact, Israel is a liability. And so,
Kathleen, Israel is obviously a liability for the United States. You know, if you look at what organizations like the Al-Qaeda have said, you know, one of the supposed reasons, quote unquote, for 9/11 was supporting Israel. Well, obviously, supporting Israel is a, you know, incredible and tragic liability.
Yeah, and it's been documented. In fact, we're going to have on our program former U.S. Ambassador Chaz Freeman, former U.S. Ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Chaz Freeman, who has also documented how Israel has been a liability, I mean, for decades to the United States. So one of the things I wanted you to touch on, Harry, is that when you gave your world talking tour, you went around the world and you talked to audiences all over the world. And tell people your impression about American audiences.
Well, I mean, generally, the American audience, generally in comparison to other, you know, groups I witnessed around the world, was less informed about the Palestinian perspective, more so than any other audience around the world. So there was a real, you know, technically speaking, ignorance about the situation afflicting Palestinians in Gaza. Being in the US and feeling the American culture and feeling the American worldview, you know, the Palestinians are kind of an unpeople in the United States, more so than in Europe. You know, they're a kind of forgotten people, a small people who cares. That was a kind of one of the, I guess, underlying implications I felt that was often present, whereas Israel is like us and strong like us and has the same kind of foreign policy ideology as us. And I really felt that kind of ideological proximity with Israel was strong in the United States, more so than I felt with any of the other groups and audiences around the world. And, you know, we had a guest, Kathleen, on our show, Palestine Today, a few weeks ago, who said this, and I said this about 2 or 3 years ago in a public posting, that, you know, if you take it down to a really base level, you know, and I'm not Gandhi or Martin Luther King, but if you think about it really on basic moral terms, you know, Israel was built on the catastrophe for Palestinians, a displacement and ethnic cleansing process which involved terrorism also against the British at the time, who were occupying Palestine, of course. But that kind of terror and that kind of dark history is the same kind of dark history which has, of course, also its place in American history, in the way that the American state came to reality. And I'm not going to, you know, say any more about that. I'm just going to put that out there for people to think about. But I think there must be something to that. There has to be something about the way that a country's culture and ideology is born out of its history and out of the history of how the country was born. And there is definitely a parallel there. And I won't add any more than that.
Well, our guests are Dr. Roger Ray, who is the minister at Community Christian Church. He's been there since August 2008. In fact, we have on Roseanne Barr's website is roseanneworld.com. His sermon, Trayvon is Dead and None of Us Are Not Guilty, is placed on that site. Also, our guest is British journalist Harry Fear. Harry Fear is a co-host with me on Palestine Today, which you can view on this station on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Harry Fear's TED Talk in Copenhagen about I think it's titled, Challenging the Reality. What is your title of your TED Talk, Harry?
It's Challenging Realities, the Mainstream Media and You.
Challenging Realities, the Mainstream Media and You. You can find that on Roseanne Barr's website, roseanneworld.com. So, Dr. Ray, leave us with some closing thoughts.
Well, I just want to encourage your audience that as easy as it has been to dismiss what is represented as religion, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, Islam, or otherwise in the United States, that there is an undercurrent of progressive thinkers that are concerned about social justice and ethics, and that I believe the mainstream church devoted to anti-intellectual mythologies is going to continue to be less and less important in the whole world, but that there will be an emergence of an approach, a more panentheistic approach to life that gives us reason to see ourselves as being connected to one another in ways that traditional religion has divided people, but I believe that we can feel the pain of Syrian refugees. We can feel the circumstances of Palestinians and rural Nicaraguans in our own flesh, in our own bodies, and begin to meaningfully change the world for the better. I sincerely believe that there will be an emerging church that will embody a much more interfaith, much more academic and intelligent approach to mercy and to justice.
Oh, I love that. That's a wonderful note to end on. And Harry Fear, you want to give us some closing thoughts?
Well, I won't be able to make such a nice closing note. I mean, it's amazing to hear that. In the UK, we don't have, we have such decline of Christianity and church attendance here. It's sort of heartwarming to hear that, to be honest with you. But I would just appeal to people to continue to be discerning about what they see on the television, and to understand that there is an automatic level of manipulation that exists, and that we must really search for the truth, as the doctor said earlier on the show. We must search for it and be passionate about it, and have an open mind and an open heart, and extend our compassion to other peoples around the world, and understand our complicity in what's afflicting other peoples around the world because of our shared moral democratic responsibility.
Well, both Dr. Roger Ray and Harry Fear have left us on a positive note. Thank you for joining us today on Roseanne Live, and we'll definitely have you back. I hope Roseanne will appreciate that we had fantastic guests, and she will want to have you back on soon. In fact, I know she will. And when she comes back, when Roseanne Barr comes back next week, she's going to talk about this conference that she attended regarding mind control. Doesn't that sound interesting? So we'll be back next week. Thank you, Dr. Roger Ray, and thank you, Harry Fear.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.